Hello and welcome again to Leon Builds Agents. Today we're going to talk about how to test different models against the same prompt to compare and contrast their performance. So for example, if you've got a project and you don't know if it needs a really big, powerful model that might be really expensive or be slow or have context size limits, or if you can utilize what might be a smaller or less powerful model that might be orders of magnitude cheaper, this is one way to go about doing that. So we're going to start off in the OpenRouter chat interface, and I've loaded up 4 models to test. So there's Haiku. This is Anthropic's smallest Claude 3 model. It's also the cheapest and the fastest. And then we've got the Wizard 8x22b model. This is a fine-tune from Microsoft that I've personally found to many times be quite effective, especially on the task that we're going to be working on today. We've got the smaller version of the other Wizard model, which is the Wizard 7B model. So it's just a smaller fine-tune of the 8x22b. And then we've got Claude Sonnet, which is the medium-sized Anthropic model. I'm not using Opus or GPT-4 Turbo just because I don't think they actually are going to be needed for this particular use case. So let's get right into what this use case is. There's a great account on Twitter. His name's Ethan Mollick. You can see right here if you search on Twitter, and he is teaching students at Wharton, I believe, how to use LLMs for educational purposes, and he has this site, moreusefulthings.com, and in this site he has a prompt library, and so he has a bunch of different prompts, and this set of prompts are actually prompts for educational instructors. So he's got project ideas for class, syllabus co-creator, all sorts of stuff. But I thought the lesson crafter prompt was going to be a good, useful checkpoint or benchmark for understanding how these models work. So if we go in and actually take a look at the prompt, it's a pretty lengthy prompt. So, we can scroll all the way down, but I'll give you kind of a quick summary. Essentially, it's a role-playing type of prompt where you're telling the model that it's a TA, a teaching assistant, who's good at lesson planning. And then it gives a series of instructions and requirements and guidance on how to actually, create these lesson plans and what to consider. So, that's something that's really great about prompt engineering is Ethan is bringing his own specific knowledge and practical experience into prompt engineering. If I were to go and write this type of prompt, it certainly would not have this level of detail and thoughtfulness. And so that's why you need to bring your own specific knowledge into the model space to actually get exceptional responses out. So let's go ahead and take a look. And it's got some more instructions for the model, and it's got kind of this back and forth type of response to try to pull out good conversations. But at the end, the output is the new lesson with the title new lesson, and it's got details and reasoning and all sorts of stuff like that. And then it's got a final rule, don't ask more than 2 questions at a time. So this is a pretty well-built prompt. So I've loaded this up into the system prompt section for each of these models. And once again, one great thing about OpenRouter is we're testing all 4 models simultaneously. Now, this is obviously, more than 4 times as expensive as just testing a smaller model because we're doing the query for each. So just be aware of that, because if you have extended conversations, 10, 20 chats back and forth, and you're using expensive models, this could get pricey quickly. But you can go in and change the max tokens parameter and the chat memory parameter to try to bring that cost down. But we're just going to go a little bit back and forth. So once again, we go back up. And we need to detail, kind of like what grade, lesson plan, what topic, what are we going to do? So let's say, let's create a lesson plan that teaches first year college students about business strategy. So this is a pretty broad starting point. But first year college students, so it needs to operate at a college level, but it's not a PhD level, right? Business strategy could have high levels of, financial formulas and accounting and mathematics, or it could be just broad strokes, something like a 7 powers framework, or, more just broad business strategy. So let's submit this and see. And the first thing we see that I love about OpenRouter is it's telling you how quickly, how many tokens per second, which is the speed that this model is producing. So we saw Wizard, the LM2 7B model was just super fast, 160 tokens per second, really fast. And if we look again, almost all of these, the shortest response was 156 tokens. The longest was 302. So that's interesting. So let's start with Haiku. What did it say? I'd be happy to help you plan a lesson on business strategy. So it's going straight in and it's asking for clarifying context, right? So that's the approach that Haiku did. It wants more context. Let's go to the larger LM2. This is going into more context, but it's not using kind of that easy to read structured formula. So we'll go in. And then kind of a similar thing with the 7B, but even more compressed. And then finally, Claude Sonnet to me performed actually most similar to Wizard 7B. Didn't really structure stuff. So if I was ranking this, I feel like, at first glance, I'd have to read in greater detail, but at first glance, I'm happiest with Haiku. What course is this lesson for? What are the key learning objectives? Do you know what background knowledge? So I'm just going to give a general response to these questions. I'm going to say, this course is aimed at ambitious college students who want to become tech startup founders in the future. They have limited business knowledge beyond fundamentals. The objective of the course is to provide a strong framework for the students to evaluate startup ideas accurately in the future. So that's kind of the goal. That's what we're going to try to teach. Students should be able to test and understand the strategic weaknesses. It's like a typing test. Strengths and weaknesses of their business ideas. So that's kind of the goal. We didn't answer each thing specifically, but let's just see. So it starts off with a new lesson, Introduction to Business Strategy for Aspiring Startup Founders. That's pretty accurate. Once again, this is the Haiku model. Define key elements of a business strategy, understand and assess strategic strengths and weaknesses. And then it's got this nice little lesson overview. I like that it started with a hook. Ask students to share their dream startup ideas and what makes them think those ideas can be successful. If you've worked with college students before, sometimes they have potentially fantastical ideas on what actually makes a good business versus in reality. So getting them to talk about their dream at the start puts them in the right frame. I like that. So then defining business strategy, applying a SWOT framework, practicing with students. This is great. And then it's got this nice reasoning from Haiku of, tapping into the startup interest like I talked about. So for me personally, I'm pretty happy with this. As a launching off point, I would want to go into greater detail, or utilize the model, more to kind of define, strategy or create a game around this second section and maybe something that teaches them. But this is a great starting point for, 30 seconds into the conversation. When we go into the wizard model, evaluating startup strategies. So it starts with an objective, materials needed. I don't think this is important. The lesson sequence. Once again, it's got this kind of formatting issue. I've personally found this with the wizard models. Later in the response, it kind of loses the formatting. So I'm not really in love with this. And it looks like it kind of cut off. So not a great response from wizard. Let's go to the smaller wizard model. And this one actually seemed to greatly outperform. And that's why I wanted to make this video, is sometimes smaller models can significantly outperform larger ones on the exact same prompt, similar parameters, all that kind of stuff. So it starts, first off, much better formatted, very simple review key concepts, all that kind of stuff. So it's got a response very similar to the haiku model. Asking students to reflect and apply at the end is definitely good pedagogy. And it's got good reasoning. So let's finally go to Sonnet. And this one didn't end up using Markdown, so it's a little bit more difficult to read. And it's basically the same as haiku. So we can stop here. We can obviously continue the exercise. But if we go into actually searching these models, or actually go to browse and go to haiku, I want to just do a quick cost comparison. So the haiku model is 25 cents per million input, $1.25 output. Now in comparison, Sonnet, which I felt like haiku outperformed and was much faster, is $3 per million input, $15 per million output. So once again, haiku is basically 10x cheaper than Sonnet, and we felt like we got better responses with haiku. That's really important. Similar situation with the Wizard 8x22b, 65 cents per million input output. So that's pretty cheap. But the 7b, once again, is an order of magnitude cheaper at just 7 cents per million. 7 cents per million. That means if you used 377 million tokens, you're in for like a quarter. That's crazy. And when we go back in, I think Wizard might, the 7.2b might have had, the most broad piece of content to build off of. And so that's why it's really important to go in and test these models side by side with the same, with the same prompts, and start going in and tweaking these parameters. And one place you can look to tweak parameters is you can come in, click on a specific model in OpenRouter, navigate over to parameters. It also has the context window and pricing and latency and speed. And that's another thing. This Wizard model 7b is super fast. But you can go to the parameters and see people are doing a lot of tweaking on these parameters. And I actually did do a little bit of that. I've got, the temperature down a little bit, and I've got the top K that I kind of messed with a little bit. So this is a mildly tweaked model. It's not like it was just, 100% stock off the shelf like some of these others. But it's a significantly smaller model. And if you take the time to actually test these things side by side, you can end up saving yourself significant amounts of money. Because once again, this Wizard model is only 7 cents per million input output. And something like Sonnet, which is the medium model, is, I believe, $3 input and $15 per million output. And it's at half the speed as well. So you really need that really opens up a lot of use cases. And so that's why it's so critical to actually go in and test and understand. And this is just one simple example, but I'd really encourage you to go into Ethan Mollick's prompts library, test them. He's got a lot of good prompts here, and he's got a post on how to create structured prompts and creating GPTs. Both of those I would definitely recommend. So go in, try these models out. Let me know what models are, overperforming expectations for you, because there's a lot of alpha here right now in smaller models that are orders of magnitude cheaper, that are 2 to 4 times faster, and we're getting better responses. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.